Over a century has passed since the Cheyenne Dog Soldiers thundered across the Great Plains, yet their legend still commands awe. New discoveries are shattering old myths, revealing their daring battle tactics, sacred rituals, and an unbreakable warrior code unlike any in history. Who were these fearsome fighters? What made them the most elite warriors of the plains? If you crave untold history and legends that defy time, hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell, because this story will change what you thought you knew. Origins of the Dog Soldiers. Before the Dog Soldiers of the Cheyenne Nation were considered as the most elite warriors of the Great Plains, the Dog Soldiers began with humble and sacred roots, one that has left many people in shock. So how exactly did they emerge? Stick around to the end of this video, because what we are about to reveal will shock you. You see, the story of the Dog Soldiers began with the Cheyenne Nation itself. The people of Cheyenne originally emerged from the Great Lakes region, but as time went on, the Cheyenne were gradually pushed westward in the 1700s due to conflict with other tribes and encroaching European settlers. Eventually, they settled and made their home on the wide open plains of what is now Colorado, Wyoming, Nebraska, and Kansas. When they arrived there, it was not easy for them because the land was vast and full of danger. So, life there demanded resilience, mobility, and unity. The Cheyenne turned to a structure that blended military discipline with spiritual responsibility, and that was how warrior societies were formed. These warrior groups were formed because Cheyenne society was well organized around different warrior teams. Each team had its own jobs, traditions, and special ceremonies. They helped keep order in the tribe, taught young men how to fight, and protected the people when there was danger. Aside from that, there were several respected military societies like the Elkhorn Scrapers and the Fox Warriors. But as time went on, one eventually stood above the rest, and that was the Dog Soldiers, known in their own language as Hotomatani-o-o. At first, they were simply one of many warrior bands. They had no special political power, no tribal dominance, but what set them apart was their strict code of behavior and their refusal to ever back down in battle. But that was not all. Stay tuned. The Dog Soldiers were not just fighters. They were spiritually tied to their role. Their name and identity were closely tied to the dog, a symbol of loyalty, courage, and sacrifice in Cheyenne culture. But the name also hinted at something deeper. According to Cheyenne oral tradition, the first Dog Soldiers received their instructions from a sacred vision involving spirit dogs who taught them how to protect the people. These visions were not just metaphorical, they were seen as literal guidance from the spirit world. Members of the society underwent rituals, fasting, and vision quests to prepare. This spiritual duty led to one of their most powerful traditions, tying themselves to the ground during battle. They used a sacred sash tied to a wooden stake and would not move or run away. Once tied down, a dog soldier would have to fight until he won or died in that spot. To them, this was not giving up their life, and it was the greatest way to show courage and loyalty as a warrior. By the early to mid-1880s, the Dog Soldiers began to grow into something more than just a warrior society. The political landscape was changing and fast. So, as the U.S. government began to expand westward, they started to violate territories and push native clans off their ancestral lands. As this happened, tensions started to rise as settler violence, military campaigns, and broken promises became the new norm. In response to these changes, the Dog Soldiers took a stand that ended up defining their legacy forever. They simply decided that they will not disappoint their people, and because of that, they will not compromise. While some Cheyenne leaders attempted to negotiate peace or accept relocation, the Dog Soldiers believed resistance was the only honorable path. This hardline stance bought them love among younger, more militant warriors, and fear from U.S. troops. Over time, their numbers grew. They began to recruit the boldest and most defiant warriors, not only from the Cheyenne, but also from allied tribes like the Lakota and Arapaho. As their influence expanded, so did their reputation, They became known not just as defenders of the Cheyenne, but as the tip of the spear in native resistance across the Central Plains. But here's the twist. What made the Dog Soldiers so unique was how they operated. Although they were part of the Cheyenne Nation, they began to function almost like a separate entity that consisted of a military and political force of their own. They created their own camps, followed their own rules, and set up along the borders of contested territory, putting them in the position to strike quickly against enemy forces or warn the tribe of impending attacks. In time, they became so powerful that some tribal elders feared they were challenging traditional leadership. Among ordinary Cheyenne people, the Dog Soldiers were heroes. They risked their lives to defend villages, punished those who broke tribal law, and stood up to outside invaders with a kind of fearlessness that inspired entire generations. The origin of the Dog Soldiers is not just a story about a group of warriors, it's a story about transformation, about how a small band of fighters grounded in spiritual belief and community duty rose to become a symbol of unshakable resistance. Although the story of how the Dog Soldiers began is amazing, you may be surprised to learn there's something far more shocking about these warriors. What was it? Keep watching to find out. The Code of the Dog Soldiers. As the Dog Soldiers rose to power among the Cheyenne and across the Great Plains, they were not just known for their fearlessness in battle, they were defined by a strict, sacred code. This code shaped how they lived, how they fought, and how they died. It was more than a set of rules. It was a way of life, built on loyalty, spiritual belief, and absolute devotion to the protection of their people. At the heart of the Dog Soldiers' code was unwavering loyalty to their fellow warriors, their tribe, and the land. Once a man became a Dog Soldier, he was not just joining a military unit. He was taking a vow. His life was no longer his own. It belonged to the people. They believed it was better to die than to allow harm to come to their community. This wasn't just talk. Time and again, Dog Soldiers chose to stand and fight when others might retreat. They lived by the belief that cowardice was a deeper wound than death. This mindset made them not just brave, but terrifying to their enemies. They were not just fighting for wealth, territory, or revenge. They were fighting with spiritual purpose, and that kind of conviction was something that was hard to break. However, the most powerful symbol of a Dog Soldier's code was the sacred sash, a long strip of fabric worn over the shoulder during battle. In moments of extreme danger, a Dog Soldier could remove his sash, drive a stake into the ground, and tie himself to it. This act was called staking down, and it meant only one thing: they will not retreat. They will fight to the death right here. The sash was considered holy. Only the bravest warriors earned the right to wear it, and even fewer had the courage to stake themselves to the earth. But when they did, it inspired everyone around them. Other warriors would rally to their side. Some would even do the same, creating a last stand that could turn the tide of battle or leave a legacy of honor that would be remembered for generations. Aside from the stacking down, they practiced as a sign of spirituality. The Dog Soldiers were even more connected to the realm of the spirits deeply. Their strength came from visions, rituals, and medicine. Each member often underwent vision quests, spending days in isolation, fasting, and praying until they received spiritual guidance, often from sacred animals like wolves, eagles, or bears. The wolf, in particular, held special meaning. It was seen as a creature of endurance, teamwork, and ferocity. Many Dog Soldiers believed the spirit of the wolf walked with them in battle, guiding their decisions and giving them strength in the face of overwhelming odds. They also carried medicine bundles, collections of sacred objects blessed through ceremony. These bundles were personal and powerful. They believed it would offer protection and spiritual clarity. Entering battle without one was unthinkable. Rituals surrounded every aspect of Dog Soldier life, from preparation before war to ceremonies honoring the fallen. War was never random or careless. It was sacred. These Dog Soldiers were far more than a group connected to the spirit world. They were the guardians of justice within the Cheyenne Nation. They played a vital role in keeping order, ensuring that tribal laws were respected and that dishonorable behavior was never ignored. If someone broke a treaty, harmed a fellow Cheyenne, or disrupted the peace of the community, it was the dog soldiers who were sent to handle the situation. Their presence alone often restored calm, and their reputation for swift, fearless action earned them deep respect from both allies and enemies. However, with that power came a great responsibility. Dog soldiers held themselves to a higher standard of conduct. They believed they could not demand honor and discipline from others unless they lived by those values themselves. Integrity and self-discipline were core to their identity, not something forced upon them, but something they accepted willingly. They trained hard and took their duties seriously. Being late for training or falling asleep while on guard duty was completely unacceptable, regardless of how tired or hungry one might be. Their loyalty to their people and their code of honor came first, always. In every action they took, the dog soldiers aimed to be examples of courage, discipline, and unwavering commitment. Through this, they became not only warriors, but symbols of justice and strength within the Cheyenne world. The dog soldiers lived by a code that demanded everything from them and gave nothing in return, except honor, loyalty, and spiritual purpose. The true power of this code wasn't fully understood until they stepped onto the battlefield. There, in the heat of combat, the way they lived out their beliefs went beyond what most could comprehend. Their discipline, bravery, and complete dedication to their duty defied human understanding. Don't go anywhere, because we are about to uncover the mysteries behind those sacred codes and how they shaped the dog soldiers' legendary presence on the battlefield. Elite tactics and combat style. One thing that helped the dog soldiers survive battle was their codes. These codes enabled them to become mighty tacticians, strategists, and masters of psychological warfare. On the open plains, where speed, mobility, and instinct often made the difference between life and death, they rewrote the rules of combat. While the U.S. military fought with its drilled formations, long supply lines, and heavy weaponry, they were unprepared for the kind of fight the dog soldiers brought. These were not random attacks. Their warfare was calculated, disciplined, and terrifyingly effective. So, what made the dog soldiers such an elite fighting force? The answer lies in how they used the land, the horse, and their minds as weapons. The Great Plains were not empty. They were alive, shifting, and dangerous. Flat expanses, broken by river valleys, forests, and bluffs, offered opportunity and threat alike. While most military units saw the terrain as a challenge, dog soldiers saw it as an advantage. They learned from the structure of the land. They moved with it. They understood where enemies would be vulnerable and where cover could be found. Their battles were not staged head-on. They fought on their own terms. Dog soldiers could appear out of nowhere, attack with devastating force, and vanish into the land before their enemies even had time to regroup. Their ability to track, scout, and use the terrain made them ghost-like, always watching, always one step ahead. And here comes the interesting part. One of the greatest strengths of the dog soldiers was their unmatched mastery of the horse. The Cheyenne were already among the finest riders in the world, but the dog soldiers elevated those skills to a whole new level. They could ride bareback at full speed, hang off the side of a galloping horse to dodge bullets, and fire arrows or rifles with deadly precision, all while in motion. Many carried multiple weapons and used hit-and-run tactics, launching short-range ambushes that overwhelmed enemy soldiers trained to fight in rigid, linear formations. Aside from that, they also trained their horses for war. These animals were not just transport, they were partners. Some horses were even painted and adorned with symbols of war, making them part of the dog soldiers' spiritual identity. Sometimes the U.S. soldiers often talked about how Cheyenne warriors seemed to become one with their horses, turning the battlefield into a blur of motion, confusion, and relentless attack. In addition to their legendary skill on horseback, the Dog Soldiers did not follow the rules of European-style warfare, and that's exactly what made them so dangerous. Long before the term guerrilla warfare even existed, they had already perfected it. Their approach relied on speed, unpredictability, and the element of surprise. They launched sudden ambushes on supply lines, struck isolated outposts, and hit vulnerable troops before disappearing into the landscape. They used hit-and-run tactics to create confusion, attacking with precision and retreating before the enemy could mount a response. Night attacks became a powerful style. It allowed them to move under cover of darkness and disorient their opponents. And when it came to deception, they were masters at drawing enemies into traps with decoys or false movements, only to strike from an unexpected direction. These were not just battlefield strategies, they were a form of psychological warfare that left a lasting mark on every soldier who faced them. They knew that their strength did not lie in numbers or firepower. They depended on speed, precision, and fearlessness. This style of warfare made it nearly impossible for U.S. commanders to plan effective responses. Even superior weapons couldn't match what the Dog Soldiers brought: unpredictability. But it was not just physical tactics alone that made the Dog Soldiers great. It was also their ability to wage psychological warfare. They used appearance and symbolism to unnerve their enemies. Before battle, they would paint their faces and bodies with powerful symbols, not just for intimidation, but for protection and transformation. These war paintings often left their enemies in fear. Each line, color, and design told a story and sent a message that simply said, "I am not afraid. I am more than human at this moment." They also wore feathered headdresses, animal skins, bones, and other items that reflected their medicine power. These were not decorations again, they were spiritual armor. The shocking thing is that even up to now, the U.S. soldiers often describe Dog Soldiers as looking otherworldly, a deliberate effect meant to create fear and confusion. And when they rode into battle, they sang war songs that were meant to scare their enemies. So, as they sang, their voices rose sharply, carried by the wind. It was not just noise, it was a message, a warning. They were saying, "We're ready to die, are you?" But the Dog Soldiers knew they couldn't fight without weapons, and in that area, they were just as adaptable as they were on horseback. They used traditional weapons like bows and lances, but also modern guns when they could get them. Many carried rifles and revolvers taken from fallen enemies or traded through networks with other tribes. They did not just use these weapons, they mastered them. A Dog Soldier with a rifle was no less deadly than one with a bow, just dangerous in a different way. Their training allowed them to change tactics fast, depending on the land, the timing, and the size of the enemy force. Even their defensive tactics were advanced. They built earthworks, used natural terrain for cover, and could scatter and regroup with fluid precision, something that regular army troops, trained in linear formations, couldn't handle. But what may have truly made the Dog Soldiers elite wasn't just how they fought, it was how they faced death. For them, the battlefield wasn't just a place of violence. It was a sacred space where bravery, honor, and spiritual strength were tested. And when they fought, they were deadly. So, in which battle did they use these powerful tactics to full effect? Curious to find out? Stay tuned. The answer might surprise you. Major conflicts and historical impact. The Dog Soldiers fought in many battles, far more than most history books will ever mention. From sudden ambushes on wagon trains to full-scale assaults on forts and settlements, they were a constant force on the frontier. But among the countless conflicts they engaged in, a few stand out because these battles were so bold, so fearless, that they still echo through time. These are the moments that revealed the full might of the Dog Soldiers and helped define their legacy in both Cheyenne memory and American military history. One of those battles was the Sand Creek Massacre of 1864. It was one of the darkest moments in Native American history. A group of mostly Southern Cheyenne camped peacefully along Sand Creek under a white flag of truce were brutally attacked by Colorado militia. Over 230 Native people, mostly women and children, were killed. Their bodies were mutilated. Although many dog soldiers were not present at Sand Creek, the massacre changed everything. From that moment forward, the dog soldiers became even more militant. The idea of peace with the U.S. vanished. They saw the massacre not as a mistake, but a betrayal. In the aftermath, dog soldiers broke away from traditional tribal leadership, refusing to negotiate any further. From that point on, their resistance would be total. Just weeks after Sand Creek, dog soldiers joined forces with Sioux and Arapaho warriors to strike back in what was called the Battle of Julesburg. In January 1865, they attacked Julesburg, a stagecoach station in present-day Colorado. This was no random raid, it was a calculated act of vengeance. Dozens were killed, and the dog soldiers seized supplies, destroyed buildings, and sent a message. This land would not be taken without blood. It was one of the largest and most organized Native counterattacks of the Plains Wars. 3 years later, in an effort to defend their land, the dog soldiers took part in one of their most well-known battles, the Battle of Beecher Island in 1868. It started when a group of U.S. scouts and soldiers, led by Major George Forsyth, found themselves trapped on a sandbar in the Araucary River. Surrounded by hundreds of warriors, many of them dog soldiers, the soldiers dug in and prepared to fight for their lives. The Cheyenne launched repeated attacks over several days. Among them was Roman Nose, a powerful and respected dog soldier leader. Known for his height, strength, and supposed spiritual protection, he charged into battle with fearless determination. But in a shocking moment, Roman Nose was shot and killed, sending a wave of disbelief through both sides. Although the dog soldiers were not able to overrun the island, the battle made one thing clear: their courage, persistence, and fighting skills were unmatched. It took heavy losses for the U.S. forces to hold their position. By the 1870s, the U.S. military's overwhelming numbers and firepower eventually forced most Cheyenne bands onto reservations. But the dog soldiers remained a symbol of unbroken resistance. They refused to surrender peacefully. Many were hunted, killed, or captured. Others faded into history. But their legacy remained. They had fought for something bigger than themselves, for sovereignty, for memory, for the right to exist without apology. And even in defeat, they inspired awe, respect, and fear. And that's what made the dog soldiers unique. So, what do you think about the fearless rise and tragic fall of the Cheyenne Dog Soldiers? Were they misunderstood heroes defending their way of life, or warriors born for a fight that history tried to erase? Could their unmatched bravery survive in today's world of high-tech warfare and diplomacy? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more raw, untold stories from the heart of the American frontier. Then go ahead and click on the next video, because if the story of the dog soldiers moved you, what's coming next will leave you speechless.